Hey everybody, welcome back to Visual Novel Book Club. I'm your pal Slowbeef. With me, of course, my good friend Jim.
Hey there.
Pulla.
Evening.
Turbo.
Hey.
DVAC.
Hello.
Alright. Listen.
How'd your cake go?
Well, let me tell you, I'm really sick. But I toughed it out. I made
From
the
the
cake.
cake.
I read the log.
From the cake, yeah.
From your awful cake.
Yes, from the... I caught, like, something. So, alright, so this is what happened. My plan today was, I went on a trip and all that. I was like, alright, I'll make the cake, Sunday when I get home. We record this on Monday night. That didn't happen because my wife got really sick. Then I caught it from her today. I'm like, I'll make the cake after work. But I left work a little early, and I kind of collapsed on the bed. Then I woke up. It was later than I thought it was. I'm like, oh my god, I have to make this cake. So, I'm doing this little jokey thing, like, oh, my wife doesn't know about my girlfriend thing.
Definitely 100% a joke and not real at all.
Of course, yeah. But, but for the purpose of this podcast, very real. No, so, like, the thing is that I know that if my wife, like, I told her how sick I was, and I know if she, like, saw me, like, making a mug cake while I was
might
really
worry
sick,
a little bit.
She'd be like, what the hell's the matter with you? Go to bed. You know what I mean? Like,
The fever's too high, he's gone delirious.
I'm trying to make this mug cake sort of in secret, which starts with...
Secret cake?
Secret mug cake.
You have a wife and 2 kids living in that house. You ain't making no secret cake.
Here's the trick. I'm sick, so she has to take care of both the kids, and I can't be around them. Jesus. So this plan started really well until I couldn't find the flour, and I had to ask her where the flour was.
This is
Which,
some
by the way,
Tim Allen level shit.
I have to warn you too. I'm very sorry. I almost completely conform to like gender stereotype here as the idiot husband who can't do anything in this story. Because when she's like, it's in the cabinet, like the first thing, I open the cabinet and it's like right there in front of my face, and I don't even fucking see it, like a moron. I have never tried to mix dry ingredients in a mug, but that didn't work out too well. So, my wife is, I think, now kind of figured out I'm maybe going to at least amass the ingredients for the cake since I asked about the flour. But maybe she doesn't know that I'm making the cake still. And I don't want to make a mess and all that stuff. And I'm, like, washing my hands, like every, 5 minutes. I mix all the dry ingredients, I only spill a little, and this is what I figure. I'm like, in Colonial Williamsburg, they used to add, like, a dozen eggs to cakes. That way, they would be, like, more moist and fluffy. And I remember you all telling me your cakes tasted kind of brownish, so I added an extra egg. And also, and I think that's the secret to mug cakes, I'm just going to say. Also, I had chocolate chips, but I'm like, that's going to be too messy, and this mug is already kind of full as is. So, I used some caramel sauce that I had.
Oh,
for, ice cream, we got from Trader Joe's, but,
like a topping, yeah.
Yeah. So I mix it as best as I can, just for the hell of it. I put it in the microwave at 3 minutes, and I hit on. That's the point where my wife comes downstairs with my son, and she's like talking to me about stuff, and I'm like, I have to watch the cake to make sure it doesn't puff. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't explode in the microwave. I put like a paper towel over the mug. Of course, as we're talking, 1:30 to 2 minutes in, the cake is fucking enormous coming out of the goddamn mug. It's this total, yeah, I'm not feeling too great. I might do this podcast. So, and I just quickly hit the off switch on the microwave, like nothing's happening.
Boop, boop.
So what? It looks like a giant muffin in there, is what you're saying?
It's like puffing out of the top of the cup, but it was like the size of the mug. Like it was like, I'm like, oh my god, I fucked up.
Anyway, I'm going to do a podcast, honey. Have fun with the kids.
Well,
don't worry about this.
She asked me to do that. I'm like, all right, and then I'm not for the purposes of the funny story. I mean, I'm not really trying to hide the mug cake from her. So at that point, I'm like, okay. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'll make it a cake for the little visual novel podcast thing. And she kind of rolls her eyes at that. And So I take now, thankfully, when I opened the microwave, it had settled down and it resembled like a normal cake. I think the second egg really did it though. It was actually not terrible. It was pretty moist like a cake would be. It was really good. If I had one complaint, I didn't really mix the dry ingredients enough, I don't think. But I had one of those mugs that like gets wider toward the bottom, and some of the flour collected there, which was kind of but. Yeah, if you are playing Hate Plus all, I don't know, 8 of you in the future, that's the trick to your mug cake is the second egg, I contend.
But you gotta watch out, because that second egg is definitely what's gonna make it puff up really, really tall.
Yeah, I put a paper towel on top of the mug. Because, like, I was imagining something to go catastrophically wrong. Like, it exploded in my microwave.
Like, it turns out you put a mug in there that's not microwave safe, and it just starts sparking and exploding.
Because, well, you know what the problem is? I'm imagining the worst case scenario for me is I make a giant mess, and my wife goes, "What the fuck are you doing? Making a mug cake when you're really sick for visual novel book club, which you could easily postpone." And I'm like, I don't have a good answer for that. So my path, my A-level path is I just got to get the cake right and not make a mess, and everybody's happy.
I picture Metal Gear, like you're whistling out in the living room trying to get her out of the kitchen, and she's like, "What's that? Must be the wind."
Or yeah, just the cardboard box in front of the microwave. I wonder what slowbeef has in the micro. Anyway, I'll just wander on my route around the house.
There's a bunch of footprints and flour on the floor.
She's got a zone where she gets triggered, and she's like, "What? Is that cake? Was that cake?"
It smells like cake. Oh, no, nothing. Must be nothing. It's just this upside down box of oranges in front of the microwave.
I would have to say something then too, like, you know, honey, like, I gotta talk to you about you talking to yourself and narrating what you're doing, but oh mercy.
So you did it.
So I did it.
So let's see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me put it in the Discord chat, and then I'll put it up on the good old thingamabob. I apologize because it's a pretty dark photo. Like I was really rushing things today, but I think I sent it.
Yeah,
Discord.
Looks good.
I want that Donald Duck
That
coffee
is
mug.
overflowing. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, but
cake.
like, when you see it, you're gonna be like, oh, that didn't puff up that much. But it was like a head was coming out of the mug, like a human head somehow, and that was like. That was like if my life were a sitcom, that would have been the big moment of like, oh, Tim's wacky, scheme blew up in his face, and now the cake is a giant thing.
Like the cake just shoots out of the cup like a cannon and puts a hole in the ceiling, and then he spends the rest of the episode trying to fix it.
Right, like that second egg will defy the law of physics, and it becomes like a giant cake balloon or some shit. I don't know.
You use the ingredients for chia cake. It just blows up right away.
Or like it'll become like the thing from Akira somehow at the end.
Jesus.
Like what the fuck? Oh, you didn't use my biohazard eggs, did you? Womp womp womp. Oh, Kaneda. All right.
So you did it. Congratulations.
Yes.
You made the cake for the anime.
I did.
Mission accomplished.
Out into the logs. What?
So mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
So now, since this is a regular episode, we're gonna talk about the logs.
Mm-hmm.
But first, we've heard a lot about Hune and the cakes. So let's talk about what happens on the other alternate universes where you can play this game.
Mute's doing fine. Next question.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah,
There are no problems over here.
So let's talk about the last time we talked to Mute, because, I mean, there's been a lot of cake in between now and then. The last time we talked to Mute at the end of the last full episode, Mute was very upset that she found out that old Mute was basically responsible for the regime change and in a way sort of responsible for everything bad that happened, and it hit her really hard, and she just wanted to be alone.
Yeah. When we last saw her, I guess two episodes ago,
I believe the words directly for me were that she just needed time to think, and just said, let's sign off with this and let me think, and we'll resume later. And then we get back to, I guess, 12 hours later of the game, and Mute's not on the screen. You have to re-enable her. If you press re-enable, you get a sort of staticky picture of her that appears, and then it goes back to she's not enabled. You have to press the button again. You can do an emergency diagnostic at this point, but you can also look at your inbox, of which you have one new letter, and that is titled Farewell.
Like an actual email?
Yeah, it is.
Ooh.
It is from Mute, February 10th, 4989. Titled Farewell, and it is it's a pretty heavy one, and I don't really want to gloss over it, but the gist of it is that well, let's start a little bit. She says that she doesn't take this decision lightly. She makes note that she thinks at a speed a lot faster than a human does. So what was 12 hours for us was God knows how much longer for her. And she repeats into her letter a lot about how she feels like a failure. She failed keeping the Mugungwa safe. She failed sort of keeping the Mugungwa safe a second time when the sort of reactor melted down and they needed to leave. And she just feels a lot like a failure, in that she's sort of repeating old Mute's failings in a way. Scrolling down a little bit more, she says, well, I can't kill myself because I'm a failure at that too, and this is the best I can do. I'm sorry, I wish I could go all the way. Please don't grieve for me, grieve for the people, grieve for all the people that both me and Old Mute failed, but please don't grieve for a worthless, broken security program. Not gonna go into the entire thing, but it is extremely heavy for the rest of the other logs that we've seen. The long and short of it is that Mute has erased her memories in the same way that Old Mute had her memories erased. And you'll have to run an emergency diagnostic to, have her memory sort of reinitialized, and you get a sort of blank slate Mute to talk to from this point onward.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Did you re-enable, did you create a blank slate Mute, or did you leave her?
I believe, I can't quite remember because this was a while ago. I believe you need to, you can't extract new messages. That's a grayed out, so you need to do the emergency diagnostic and get Mute back sort of in a stable state before you can extract new messages, I guess. Actually, I'm not even seeing a button to... Yeah, you can't even read messages without the AI enabled. That's correct.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, you need to sort of re-enable her. I'm curious how that sort of differed with Hune around. If there was...
So you haven't seen, so you didn't, I mean, because when if you reinstate blank slate Mute, then you must get factory default in her old uniform, like the same Mute that met Queen Yuna.
Yeah, she is really confused at first when she's like, why am I not on the Mugungwa? Alright, let me, give me a few seconds, and, this is, I guess when she reads through all of the logs that we've seen up to date in, a split second. And then it's like, okay, I think I get the long and short of it.
So she reads all the logs?
Yeah, she reads all the logs that we've extracted.
All the ones from this game, or all the ones from both games?
I think both.
Oh,
yeah,
so
because we have
so
those
she's
logs
aware.
with us, so...
Yeah. she understands sort of why, what happened, and why, she's on this ship. And she understands that, like, Mute was my wife or sort of thing like that. She does actually a pretty good job of, like, sort of, for being an AI that's like, where the hell am I? Understanding that she's talking to a person that I guess sort of is grieving at this time. And so she's like, are you feeling okay? I'm sorry, I don't want to be, a replacement or sort of give you bad memories or anything like that. So.
Huh.
Wow.
So it's interesting, like, I guess. So we have. I guess who we're talking, like, we call Old Mute, who's, the Mugunghwa pre this revolution or whatever you call it, I guess. What would you call it, by the way? A coup?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's a coup. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so you had the original Mute who's pre-coup. They wipe her memory, and you had the new Mute number 2, I guess, that the player meet aboard the Mugunghwa after all this has happened, etc. And Mute 2, when she discovers what happened with Mute number 1, considers it like herself enough that she grieves and etc.
Yeah, she
But
considers herself a failure in many different ways.
But Mute number 3, this Mute that you, Turbo, met on your route, I guess she kind of considers herself a little distinct from 1 and 2?
Yeah, they all consider themselves, different. So I guess the way they differentiate it in-game is the Mute 3 that we've sort of just achieved. Gotten, I guess you could say. She pretty much immediately was like, this is going to be confusing. Here, how about I change this? And she sort of changes her name to be New Mute. So we have Old Mute, Mute, and New Mute. If that makes things easier or more confusing, I am sorry, but that's how the game does it.
Oh, made me laugh. You can't call yourself New Mute. What? It's like New Coke.
Mute Classic.
I wonder if New Mute takes it better because her base memory, like she's starting from the blank slate of, old modern times, versus being. I feel like a lot of why Mute suffers is because she was educated and trained in the regressive society that she was a part of.
There's also another email we got at a certain point. I believe I forget when, but I believe that's sort of relevant to, maybe not why this sort of thing happened to the character, but definitely a sort of major factor. I don't know if we want to get
email.
Yeah, do we want to get into that now?
I mean, I'd like to because I think it's pretty interesting. It's apparently in the future they have robot psychologists. And
who are themselves AIs.
Oh,
I didn't catch that, actually.
Yeah. And they kind of explain that there's this problem that AIs have since, people...
It was just a really old dude explaining it to us.
Yeah, like, people aren't really equipped to handle the concept of immortality when it comes to AIs.
Yeah, like human psychology doesn't...
Yeah, what's up?
Can I just throw in, too, that whoever sends you the email opens with, I know you didn't ask, but I talked to the AI psychologist to get some context for the whole robot girl shit show you've got going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Sorry. Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
I kind of like that, too. Like it's your buddy sending you this email. It's like, look, I know you've got this robot wife shit, and, I don't approve of it, but here, this might help. But, the doctor tells us that, the AIs, since they basically live forever, they are, they're usually programmed to be specialists in certain areas. And when you live forever, you can, even though they're learning AIs, you can only get so good before you start experiencing diminishing returns on what you can improve. And by the time they're 500 to 600, whatever years old, they get frustrated or angry or just sad that they're not... It seems like they're in a rut or they're not improving or what have you.
It almost feels like sort of a validated imposter syndrome at that point.
Yeah. Plus, they get surpassed.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I want to throw in one thing. Is it too late to rename this podcast the whole Robot Girl Shit Show?
Oh my god.
It's never too
Season
late.
3.
Sorry, okay.
You know, like the Looney Tunes would do that whole "That's all, folks" on like the current script. The Robot Girl Shit Show.
We found our sign off.
There you go.
Yeah, I in my notes I interpreted it a little bit differently, but just like this idea of like, you know, if you're immortal, you eventually reach this plateau of mastery, and they sort of feel despondent, and not necessarily because they have mastered something, and they I think it even talks about that they could be better at it than people. But that they can improve, and the quote that I wrote down also from that letter is, learning new skills has a much larger personal impact than refining something that one has already mastered. And the Dr. Autumn, the AI writing to you, talks about how they used to be one kind of thing, and then they switched. They're like a photographer, and then they went into human psychology, and then they went into AI psychology. And like in periods of like 400 years.
Yep. And I think they say that's like the key. Like every 400 years, an AI tries out a new career, maybe not completely different, but goes off on a new path, and you know has to start from scratch and relearn all these things, and that is what re-energizes them to continue life.
And
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting because it makes sense. Like from even like a regular human standpoint, like I could completely see how that would make total sense.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so I feel like in a way this sort of adds to the understanding of why Mute might have sort of felt overwhelmed at that point. That she had one job and she sort of failed at it, and that's sort of because, you know, I think old Mute was like 1,500 years old and was security counselor all that time. Mute was I forget how long, but also like probably over the 400-year mark.
300 years.
Oh, okay, so getting
322, because that's when everyone died.
Yeah, 322, and then put into stasis for who knows how long by Hune. So it's not to say that there's ever a single sort of reasoning for, I guess, robot suicide, AI suicide, but I feel like that sort of sheds a lot of light onto, you know, both how an AI might work, but also how a human might sort of see it that way.
Yeah, and the central conceit is that these AI they're basically the human, like an idea of human psychology taken to its greatest extent. So like the flaws that you see crop up in AI are just human psychology flaws that end up reproducing themselves over the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just get exacerbated because we're dealing with actual immortality.
Yeah.
This is actually similar to a lot of vampire literature that I have read in my life, which is almost the exact same question of what do you do when you just take a regular person and you extend them out over infinity? How do people cope with it, and that people ultimately cannot? But then there's these ideas that you would like go into a depression, or you would like retreat from the world for a long period of time and reinvent yourself and live multiple lives.
Yeah, or just go into this like permanent state of ennui where you just, you know, coughin' up and don't interact with society.
Yeah.
Mute, on the other hand, was sort of forced into being in the same role for her in all of her entire lifetimes, except for, I guess, new Mute, who is getting a new chance at things.
Yeah.
There's like a cracked article actually on why immortality sucks, and like one of the things they mention is that like as you get older your perception of time goes faster, so it like feels like things are like kind of speeding up.
Yeah.
In a way, which is sort of like it sucks as you get older and older, you know, like things just go kind of faster and faster. So it is this sort of notion, if you had no theoretical limit on it, that like you would just feel like months were going by.
Yeah, and that affects your ability to adapt, because if you can't perceive subtle changes in your atmosphere, you don't pick up on the ability to change.
Right. I just wanted you to feel bad for me because I'm a little older. But anyway, go ahead. So,
How's the cake going?
it's. I didn't mix the dry ingredients enough.
So if you have both of them, so when you log back on, Hyune immediately says, I have to talk to you about something that happened last night. And Hyune says that Mute tried to kill herself, and she does say it in that way, and that she wanted to erase her memories. But Hyune, since Hyune was there, she told Mute that we should at least talk. Like, she should at least talk to us, the investigator, about it first. And we get a very I think a unique dialogue situation where Hyune keeps taking us to the side and then asking us what she should say to Mute. And I don't know if there's like a failure state for this or not, or like I don't know if it's just like a flavor or if there's like a way that you could end up with one outcome or another outcome.
Well, let me ask you this. Yeah. Did you spot any choices that looked like you were blatantly trying to get Mute to kill herself?
No, I don't think so, but I'm actually not sure. I wrote them down. I wrote all three of them. I wrote all the other options down so I could tell you guys what happened. So it starts out with Hyune's just like, what should I say to her? And I feel like I was a little upset at Hyune because I was like, look, Hyune, you have to step up and do this. Like, you can't just do this through me. Like, you have to grow up and do this. But she says, what should I say? And my options are, I'm so sorry, Mute. I think we should talk, or don't be a coward. I mean, I feel like don't be a coward is perhaps talking about, like, it could be don't be a coward and take the coward's way out, which is referring to suicide, or it could be sort of like keep going. I'm not really sure. I didn't pick that one. And she also kept saying I'm sorry to Mute all the time, and Mute was irritated by that, so I told her to say I think we should talk. They talk a little bit about what's going on. Hyune's being a little bit too soft toward Mute, and so Mute is lashing out back at her, and she's upset, and she says she doesn't have a reason to live anymore because she doesn't have a purpose anymore, as, she only has this one job. And, but Hyune does say a nice thing, which is, that's not how she feels about Mute. So she's saying, Mute's like, I'm useless, and Hyune's like, I don't think you're useless. The investigator doesn't think you're useless. Like, you still have abilities and things you can do in the world. And so since that seemed to be working, then we go to another dialogue choice where we have the option for Hyune to say to Mute, your responsibility is still to protect me as the only surviving member of the Magungwa. I'd miss you if you were gone, or stay alive to make up for failing me before.
Sorry, that's really...
I picked I'd miss you if you were gone because talking about, like, her feelings versus general statements, like, seemed to be, like, Mute seemed to respond to that better. But Mute still says, I've only been with you for 2 days, you won't really miss me if I was gone. And Hyune actually second guesses her choice, and we go back to the dialogue, and she gives me a chance to change my advice. But I didn't change my advice, and I don't know if that's like a strike against me or whatever, or what it was, but I didn't change my advice because I thought that was the best thing for Hyune to say. And Mute talks about, she says she's from another time, and the Earth that we're going to is for me, the investigator, and Hyune, but it's not for her. And Hyune gives me another dialogue choice. The options are, if I could survive culture shock, then so can you. Don't make me have to figure out Earth while also mourning you. And the last one is just finish what you started at least. Which I don't know if that's like actually asking her to end it. Or if that's like, we started this journey, so finish this journey to Earth before you make a decision. But I had Hyune say, don't make me have to figure out Earth while also mourning you. At some point also Hyune's like, how should I react to her, and I kind of like had Hyune sort of start out more gentle and get more harsh as Mute got more harsh back at her. So eventually she does yell at Mute and is like, snap out of it, like, listen to me. And she's like, I also don't know what's going on, and if you're gone, I'm gonna be alone, I'm not gonna know what to do on Earth, and, we have each other, and Mute is touched that we would mourn her, and she eventually says that if it would make us sad, if it would make Hyune sad, then it'd be selfish of her to kill herself, so she won't. And it ends there. So Mute seems to be, still kind of, I mean, she's still not in a good place, but she's pretty, like, a lot more stable than when we start the conversation. So, and so that was, that's what happens when both of them are there. So Mute and Hyune are still there with us reading the files. And also then they say, now there are these junk files. Now that we've decrypted the death of Mute, we have the ability to decrypt other files that are about Oh Yuna. And so I felt good about this because I felt like, as much as this is painful for Mute, like the stuff about Yuna is really gonna put some pieces into place. That, I felt like it was good. It was good that she was able to read them to have the whole picture.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, the dialogue for how Hyune wants me to give her advice is different. It also looks different. It's not in a circle. It's just like the more standard looking Ren'Py prompt boxes that are big squares because that's a lot of dialogue. So it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to fail that. And Mute's like, oh, never mind. Because I didn't, and I don't really want to go back and find out.
That would be really, really tragic.
Yeah, and Hyune, but I was a little annoyed with Hyune for asking me to help. I help as much as she did, instead of like me being sort of involved in more of like a 3-person conversation. I'm just sort of speaking through her, and I feel like I wanted to be like, Hyune, you know enough about feelings that you should be able to do this. Like, you have to
Like,
be
her problem is
straightforward.
that she knows this stuff, but she's just constantly second-guessing herself about everything.
Yeah. But I thought it was a really good scene. It had a lot of emotional impact, and I think Hyune says, she says the best things that she can say from her perspective, which I thought was also good. Like, it definitely, they never, Hyune and Mute together, like, they never quite have the same perspective on things, and that always comes through, and I think that that's a really great element of characterization in this game, that, like, they never are coming from the same place, and you can tell in all their dialogue they don't see the world the same way, and they never do. And as frustrating as that is, the fact that it's so consistent is a really, like, nice bit of writing, I think. So yeah, so Hyune and Mute, and I like that a lot better. I like that they're together versus leaning on me so much to be the solution. So yeah, so next we get we have log files about Oh Yun-ah. So these are gonna fill in some gaps, going backwards in the timeline. So starting from 4038.
It really kind of puts into place where everything started.
Yeah, now the thing that we've been waiting for this whole time, which is what the hell's going on with Oh Yun-ah, really raises more questions than it answers.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
What was the first one? I'm sorry. Is it
Co-conspirator?
Co-conspirator.
Yeah.
So this starts with Yuna writing to her sister, about university drama, and she talks about first of all, she references, so she calls this woman her sister, this woman Misoon. Misoon?
Little
Misoon?
sister. It's
Yeah.
emphasized, yeah.
Yeah, and she refers to her father being Counselor O, and she says my father versus our father, which is how you would refer to someone who was your sibling and also had the last name O. So, I mean, unless they were really, like, cousins or something like that. Anyway, so that's a little weird. And she's like, usually, you know, she had to go to, like, some formal dinner or something like that. And she's like, usually I hate politics. And then she says, and so then we get a really interesting picture of Oyuna, because, you know, she's working at the university, she's going to this formal event, and she's like, I just thought it was a good chance to finally get laid by a man for once.
And she emphasizes the by a man for once. Like, that's clear.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning.
So we get that, okay, so Oyuna is bi. Maybe we'll get, there's a lot. I really want the audience to find, like, for those of you who are not reading along, please find this out at the same rate that we found this out, which is...
Because it's a journey, and we ain't all the way there yet.
We just started this journey. And so she meets this, so she's at this dinner, and she meets this bookish man named Ryu Hyunsu. And so she starts, sort of, I don't know, entertaining herself by talking to him, by leading him on, and Mute at this point interrupts this and says, she just wanted Ryu for his cock, and Hyune goes, well, if his descendant is anything, and Mute goes, no. And so yeah, Yuna's talking to Ryu about her thesis, which is myopic social destruction caused by the increasing discourse of democratization. So she's like, her thesis is already about how, like, I guess, like, her these political beliefs that, like, stability is more important than freedom of choice in a society.
Yeah,
so
she
she's,
comes
like,
across
already
as,
on that train.
Yeah, she comes across as the kind of person that just cannot stand the current political system, hates politics, and wants to go back to sort of the old way of doing things.
So she starts this already more radical. Like, her thesis is about these radical beliefs that get enforced.
Yeah. And also just the idea that, like, that democracy itself leads to self-indulgent behavior. And which is destructive in her eyes. Which is, wow. It's a big jump from the beginning.
So she's already there. So I feel like we're in a way, we're sort of missing how she got there still. Like, she's already there in this log. But I think we do kind of get a little bit more insight into how she got there in the later logs. But so she's excited. She's talking to Ryu, and he's like, you know, he's a counselor now, and he talks about, you know, everybody's heard that he's going to be High Counselor. And so she is actually really excited about this opportunity to use his influence to push her agenda. And, like, she writes very plainly about how she manipulates him into thinking he's smarter than her and that this is all his idea. Like, she's writing this to Misoon, and she's just, like, very transparent about how she's doing this. And it's a little unsettling just how transparent she's being in this letter about how this is how she thinks about people. Like, she's like a biotruth type person. Like, she's like, you know, this is the algorithm for how flirting works, and I have to be like this, and he has to be like this.
She
and
does.
This is how it works.
It's very, very methodical. Like, they do this little back and forth flirting thing where she pretends to just be the blushing beauty, and it's all very calculated. And she, you know, whenever she gets a chance, she says, well, I was just pretending I did this, you know, just to, you know, continue the act.
Yeah, and it really also sort of puts a little bit more context into the dialogue that we saw from her during the raid, where she is like we're like, why are these people talking to each other like cartoon villains? And it's like, this is why, I guess, because this is how she is. And so she also writes that she sort of tested him in the conversation to see if, he's not just talking a big game, if he would actually be willing to take action toward her agenda with the power that he's about to get. And his response is satisfactory to her. And Mute calls her a seductress, and Hyune says, "What is she even doing? This is so gross." So this whole thing is really, it's really sinister and I don't know, sociopathic.
Yeah. She also talks about wanting to overthrow this awful hedonistic society. So like she's let her intentions be like known right from the beginning.
Yeah, and I'm also like, I'm not like the way, because she says some things to Ryu, and it's like, yeah, about like feeling like society's hedonistic and all this stuff, and she, like, I don't know, I'm like, I don't take any of her views like at face value, even in this letter, because she just is totally playing a game all the time with everyone. So I don't even know if that's really what she thinks or not. Because for someone who's like really down on the evils of society, I don't know, I guess that she doesn't complain about those things very much in her letters. Like she doesn't have a point where she sort of like pops off and is like, well, this is the real problem, and if women just did this and amended this, but she says it like I don't know, it's not enough, I guess. I'm not really convinced.
Like if we had maybe a couple other logs about maybe something that happened to her that made her think like this, but at this point, all we have is just, society sucks.
I guess
They're
all
all
the people
rotten.
that I, all the
My
people I
name
know
doesn't
in real
matter.
life,
What matters is what I'm gonna do.
like in real life, like if you're talking about like like a conservative pundit or something like that, or a university professor, of which I know many, and you ask them their opinion on something, like they'll just go off, like and it's anytime you have the opportunity to talk about why something's bad, even if you've explained it 100 times to this person, and she doesn't quite do that. She just sort of she says these platitudes like about how society is spiraling downward, but she doesn't really sort of pop off about it the way I would expect someone who sincerely holds these beliefs. Like, it still seems like a mask for something else.
Like, if we got a snippet of what her thesis was, that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It would give us a better insight, I think.
Oh, I also realize now, looking at my notes, like, after this log is the sort of the second half of the conversation that I just told you the entirety of, so it's split up between before and after the logs.
Yeah, after we read this first log, for the Hyune only folks, we had she asked for a break.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And she just, it was a pretty, like, innocuous one. She just, like, do you mind having me as a sidekick? And you're like, no, of course not, that's fine. And then she talks about how things have changed so much in 300 years, and she wonders about what's going on now on Earth. And then she says, could you tell me more about the job you're going to do on Earth? And it's weird. It's like, there's like 3 options. One of them is like, it's just a paycheck. Another one is just like, it's just an excuse to go back. And then, I forget what the third one, it was something like...
It makes people happy was the third one.
Yeah, it makes people happy. And I think I went just...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I picked the Earth one.
Yeah, just an excuse to go back. And she's like,
right.
"Oh, that's nice." And when you get done talking to her, I think all of them probably circle back to the same end result. And when you get done talking to her is when you get the email from the AI psychologist. Mm-hmm. Which just a nice little fun thing is the AI psychologist, as we mentioned before, turns out to be an AI. Who used to be a human person and is now a human psychologist, now an AI psychologist. And her name is Dr. Autumn, and she works at the Susan Calvin Institute. Susan Calvin is a major character from Isaac Asimov's robot fiction. Yeah, she is the she's like she reoccurs again and again in short stories, including the stuff that like led to iRobot and a few other stuff. She works, I think she's like the chief like robo-psychologist or something at like the main thing, whatever the main like company is in the books, and so yeah, it's a nice little throw out there.
Good catch.
Cool. Alright, so yeah, another thing about Hyuna and Mute's conversation is that they sort of end with Hyuna, like, Mute says basically, like, why would you trust me, at the end of the conversation, and Hyuna says, because we read about old Mute, and we trust her, and we know you now, and we trust you now, and so she's like, okay, let's keep reading. So that was it, just sort of being like, you know, we understand old Mute, we understand you, so that was a nice thing. So, continuing with the logs, the next log is The Most Important Thing by Oh Mi-soon. So we get a letter from Mi-soon. This is from 4040. And Mi-soon is writing to her mom about something. This is and it becomes clear throughout in the letter that her mom is dead. She is writing an unsent letter just to sort of get her feelings out, and it seems like that's she got a suggestion from their maid to write this letter to nobody. And she says that Yuna is becoming obsessed with Ryu, and it's worrying her. So this is 2 years after the previous log that we read. And she says, it's all, Ryu will overthrow the state, and we'll establish a new dynasty together. And she says it like, it's all like this, it's all like that. And
He never talks anymore.
Yeah.
Not us.
It's real strange, real goofy. So she also sort of explicitly says that Yuna was responsible for the motherhood credit. So I guess this log is from right around in there. And Mi-soon says that, well, she had talked back to Yuna about it, and she's like, what about people who don't want to have children? Or, what if you don't want to just be with some man? What if you want to be, what if you want to be with a woman?
To back that up a little bit, it's kind of revealed that the entire intention of the Motherhood Credit Act was just a social push. Not specifically to get population numbers up, but the idea that every woman should be married, and that's kind of what a woman's purpose is. And then the whole thing, her little sister pops up saying, well, what about people that don't want to get married, or people that want to get married to somebody else, people that don't want children? And kind of responds saying, well, that's not what somebody's purpose is. That's just frivolous. That's hedonistic. It doesn't serve any purpose.
Yeah, so Mi-soon says she doesn't want to be with anyone other than Big Sister Yuna, which sounds wow, which is what I wrote in my notes. So they're clearly not, like, they're in a relationship, and it's some kind of weird power dynamic. Mi-soon is really upset by everything that Yuna says, but she doesn't have the words to argue with her. Yuna also says that being with a man and having children is the highest form of love. And so then Mi-soon says, do you think we have a lesser form of love, big sister? And Mi-soon says she gets mad, and she, quote, stormed off to sleep on the couch instead. At this point, I was very disturbed with where this was going.
I wonder why.
Wait, at this point? Because it doesn't get much better.
Yeah, because that's where you realize, like, she's like saying, like, we sleep in the same bed, like, we're in a relationship, like, what is any of this? Why is the romantic, clearly, like, some kind of romantic relationship that they're in, why do they call each other sister when they're in this relationship? Like, in this world where, like, queer people exist, like, I mean, it might not be, like, the most socially acceptable thing, I guess. I don't know. It seems like it's not, I mean, before the stuff starts happening, we see, we see the actress and the flower girl, and they're together, and, the actress has all these fangirls, and that is at least something that is known. It's not, like, we don't hear about that sort of actively being condemned until, until stuff, until these sort of policies start getting enforced.
Yeah, and it almost seems like family is so important, and not just generally important, but important to your identity, that the idea of family can supersede the idea of sexuality. Like, so it's not quite the idea of, because I think, early in the, we're at the end of Analog, we realized that the captain and his wife were, I guess, at best cousins, and probably closer. So we know that incest exists here, but let's see, it almost seems like those kind of taboos have been suppressed in terms of how people think about themselves. So it's more the idea of like, hey, we don't even know what's going on completely with the two of them, but the idea that even calling yourself sister would throw off the way you see yourself doesn't really factor in.
Yeah, so, and I think, this is, like, in the society that they're in now, this is real messed up, but yeah, I guess in the society that eventually happens, it is not, or I guess it wouldn't even be something that would be thought of.
The society that Yuna sort of helps create.
Yeah. So I think we'll talk more about Yuna and why she has this relationship at the end, because there's still more. The next log is called Respectful of Family from ex-Counselor O and is from 4042. So this is when the Counselor O, the Counselor of Education, was unseated due to the meritocracy exam. And this letter is addressed to Pyeon Misoon, which is, I think, Misoon's real name. And he refers to her as Yuna's consort. And he's mad that he lost his position due to the meritocracy exams. And it also shows Misoon's response at the bottom. And she says, "You got my name wrong." And she says, "I don't think telling someone to go behind her big sister's back is very respectful of family." The next thing I wrote in my notes is, "What is this?" in all capital letters. And that's all the notes I have on that log.
Yeah. Basically, the ex-counselor is coming to Payon, or I'm not sure what to call her now.
Misoon, but yeah.
Misoon, yeah.
Like, her real last name is Pyeon, like, they're not sisters.
Right.
Yeah.
Coming to her because he's tried appealing to Oyuna directly, who's been ignoring him, saying that this meritocracy exam, you said that this wasn't going to affect me, you said that, this and that, and he's not getting any kind of response, so he's wanting her to kind of go behind her and see if there's any evidence that the tests were mishandled or that there was some sort of foul play going on, and just completely misjudges the situation to where, I'm not going behind my sister's back, sorry.
And I just, like, I could totally understand why Yuna would want publicly for people to be like, "Oh, that's your sister," because then she could have a relationship with whoever she wanted, and like they would be a secret, and so she could like date Ryu and like marry him and stuff, and keep the secret relationship. But why does Misoon need to think that they're sisters? That's really where I'm worried.
And he kind of brings up family. He is kind of appealing to her and says, "Do you really want the woman you're counting on to be so reckless about her family? Do you really think you'll be able to keep up your comfortable lifestyle if our family continues to decline?"
Yeah, and just to clarify something, is ex-counselor O, is that Yuna's father?
I think so. Yeah.
Right.
He's the counselor.
So he's so divorced from his daughter that he has to go to the person he considers her consort to like appeal, to be like, "Hey, if some like distant cousin takes over this family, tell my daughter she's in danger too, and hey, you as her consort, like, you're in danger as well," because he is not picking up the fact that he has been clearly conspired against, that he has been like had the wool pulled over his eyes this entire time.
Yeah, what if next time it's not even a distant O that gets chosen as counselors of education?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next log is called Burned Evidence, Burned Feelings by Omisoon, which is a little on the nose.
Yep.
So Yuna has sent Misoon some writing on paper, which Hyune and Mute, upon reading this, mention is illegal. So writing on paper is illegal. I guess still, currently, in this society. Can't write on paper. There's no paper. And so there you go. So there's the explanation of how this conspiracy has been communicating. They've been communicating using paper, which is burnable or can be destroyed. Misoon burned the papers with messages about the counselor candidates. So Yuna rigged the council.
I'm surprised that's, like, doesn't set off an alarm bell, like, to burn stuff on a spaceship, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why it's illegal.
Well, there you go.
So but she's like, this is illegal. But so Misoon's like doing all these things, but she's like, isn't this bad? And she says, that Yuna, like, that Yuna's not around really at all anymore, and she doesn't get fired up about sociology stuff all the time anymore, which is interesting, because like I was talking about before, like where's like the rants that are usually associated with somebody being really ornery about social change. And I guess they had a fight because Misoon dressed up real pretty and showed up to visit Yuna at work, and Yuna shooed her away because she might have some kind of influence on Ryu. So this, like, again, like, really, like, bio-truths, like, no, you look really pretty, and if he sees you as, like, a more worthy mate or something like that, then he's gonna be distracted from me, and, like, I need this to happen this certain way.
Yeah, even more beyond the whole bio-truths thing, it's more like, you're a piece that doesn't fit into my puzzle. I need you off the board.
Yeah. And it's not part of this game that she's playing anymore, and Misoon says that Yuna isn't confiding in her anymore, and she knows that Yuna isn't confiding in Ryu because, quote, emotional insecurity lowers her sexual value in his eyes.
Jeez.
So it ends with Mute going, why didn't she actually tell Yuna about any of these feelings? Why did she just write these in letters to no one?
Yep. And we see like the real letter too, which is just, oh yeah, she uses a cobra, like, oh, I lit those candles you wanted me to, and miss you.
Oh right, yeah. So she burned the things. So Yuna is using Misoon as like her co-conspirator and sort of like her like fall woman, it seems like where like this could be pinned on her perhaps if something ever went wrong.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's some sort of like power play, or not power play, but like domination aspect going on here.
Well, yeah, in their relationship, absolutely. But also in this, like, evil plan to take over everything. So the next one is by O Yuna, and it's from the next year, 4043, and it's called Queen Consort. Yuna starts with saying that she dealt with that professor that was giving me hell, so this is, after she had, Professor Kim killed. She talks about how she's stuck as Ryu's, quote, private girl until they can get married, and until they can get married, and she can legally justify banning divorce.
Yeah.
So she wants stability so badly is the thing right here, and it starts to come out, like, in this especially, like, really what's going on, which is that Yuna herself is a person who craves stability and control over her life so terribly, and she extrapolates that to everyone else in the world instead of just her.
Yeah.
And she continues with her sort of biotruths talk, or her like really like behavioral psychologist game theory kind of thing about how people interact and how men and women interact. And she says that she wishes that was her future. I mean, the ship's future. So yeah. Mute and Hune are shocked while they're reading this. Yuna then goes on about how she doesn't want any responsibilities anymore. She's tired of dealing with the university, and like the pressure is so high, and like she has all this stuff she has to do. But she's like, well, why don't I quit my... And it's like, well, why doesn't she quit her job then? Why doesn't she just quit just for her and not anybody else? But I guess she would still be upset that society was like going on without her, again, because she seems to extrapolate the problems that she personally has with herself and her life to the ship as a whole, instead of just being her private problem, where like she could just quit her job and be a stay-at-home mom, and like that would be okay.
I think what's really coming out in this log is that she is the kind of person that everything in this game is her setting things up to basically be like unable to be thrown away. Banning
it is
divorce,
like a game
marrying,
too.
having kids. It's the idea that I want my life to be so secure that there's no chance that I could ever be thrown away.
Yeah, and she says, like, I don't just want to marry this guy. I'm not going to have sex with him until we're married, so that I have this power over him, or what she perceives as power over him. She wants to get married to him and then ban divorce so that he legally cannot divorce her. So what happened to Yuna?
Yeah. And also, like, it kind of brings up this idea that there's this flawed concept that I think she has, which is that, like, I think she recognizes that this is a society facing extinction, and she personalizes that as, well, I now know why it's facing extinction. It's because it's got democracy and it's got people with hedonistic attitudes, and it needs these old traditional ways to come back into these old traditional ideals of like a woman's role and men dominating things, and that's what's going to preserve this. And now that I've identified the problem and the solution, I'm going to enact that. And what it comes down to, though, is that she's a freaking psychopath. She has no ability to empathize with the people around her, nor does she even really try to at any point. Now, maybe this is going to come out differently, as we reveal more about her. But as we currently see her, she literally doesn't even identify with the pain she's causing Misoon, like, while she's telling her these things.
Who should be, like, the most, like, it seems like the most important person to her.
Yeah. And the person who's made the most effort to care about her own feelings when no one else has, and she's just dumping on her through the entire letter.
So that's Yuna. Man, something.
Yeah, Yuna's a lot.
Yeah, what happened to you? Yuna?
The views that she has, like, I mean, I can, like, the views that she has and the actions that she takes, like, I have the most sort of grounding in, like, we're talking about, like PUA, MRA type stuff, where, like, but of course, a lot of that is much younger people, much younger men who are sort of like, well, if women were legally required to marry me, then I wouldn't have to put any effort forth into getting a date, and so then and that would be better, right? Is this idea, like, because of the anxiety, right? And like you just said, like the anxiety of rejection or having to deal with uncertainty.
I feel like she's kind of very, like, I don't want to say realistic in, like, this future space thing, but you can sort of understand her a bit better logically as like, a character, because of that sort of, like, you're able to understand her roots and that this sort of dissociation exists from her point of view. Oh no, I'm crediting her.
Do you mean like because she's in the environment that she's in, it's like we have to
not
kind
necessarily.
of, like,
I'm more crediting Christine Love as creating a sort of villain that also has an not just like I want to make things Confucius style because that rules. It's more of like a sort of flawed character that has pretty deep problems rooted in who knows what that has reasons for enacting this sort of thing.
I still feel like there's a larger rhetorical purpose for the mastermind of all of this being a woman, but since we haven't read everything about Yuna yet, I'd want to I feel like it's getting there, but I don't quite have it
I'm
why that is.
thinking...
Because I feel like there's something very powerful there about women that is perhaps very interesting that's being explored, but I want to wait until the end to really get a full picture of it.
Yeah, but I get what you're sort of saying. It's sort of like we thought that the emperors were sort of the big bads in the analog, and now it's sort of like the behind every strong man there's an even stronger woman type thing.
Well, but there's definitely the general theme of sacrificing freedom for stability, and this is definitely an extreme of that, where Yuna feels like she can make that decision on behalf of everyone else.
I'll tell you what's going on here. Have you ever heard of coup cucking? It's like
that's the end of the podcast.
Aren't those the chickens from Zelda?
It's one. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, they are the chickens from Zelda. That was a one-off joke. I had no follow-up.
No,
okay, thank God.
That's fine. Let's do the last log.
Yeah.
The last log is memorial speech draft by Park Jin-sung from 4043, and this is the draft of his speech in memorial of Professor Kim. Park Jin-sung seems to be the student president of Academics Against Neo-Confucianism, which was a group started by Professor Kim. So that's really interesting because we already had Professor Kim's conversation with Hyosung Bok, and it was very I don't care about anything, everything sucks, blah, 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 blah. But clearly at the university, he was arguing about this all the time, and he started a group, Academics Against Neo-Confucianism, to fight against Yuna's policy changes. And I think it's really interesting. It seems like it's a complicated portrait of Professor Kim and Hyoseo Young, right? We sort of get these little insights into them that they seem to be one way, but there are things to sort of ground them as real people with values and not just selfish jerks who are only concerned about their own careers. And I thought that was an interesting thing, and that all the students were severely impacted by his death. Kim's students specifically mentioned the intersectionality of classism and sexism in Yuna's new program. So they're using the words. They know about these things, at least in the university. They have the vocabulary to be this is why this is messed up.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
Kim was apparently
really
the last holdout professor to teach classes exclusively using Korean script over Chinese.
Yeah, so I think it's really. It also shows the sort of the holdouts that everybody's sort of holding out against this regime change, and that that they know exactly what's happening. They sense what's happening. They have the words to describe it. It's not like it's catching. It's not like they don't have the. It's not like it caught them because they didn't know better. They know better. I thought that this letter really shows that everyone, the society knew better. And he ends it very strangely. He ends it with a story about Professor Kim giving him relationship advice. And he says, you have to be decent. And he ends the letter with, you have to be decent.
Yeah, it's not always about being clever. You have to be decent.
Yeah, and that's why he's disbanding the Academics Against Neo-Confucianism group. And I think this is bad. Because he's sort of doing the sort of I don't want to get too political. He's sort of being
he's capitulating.
Well, yeah, he's capitulating. He's you know, they hate us and everything we stand for, but we should donate money so they can rebuild their center that got destroyed. And you know, it's like that sort of thing of like, oh well, you know, the discourse has to be elevated to a certain level, and we can't like stoop down. And he's basically like saying like against the sort of next logical move, which would probably be some sort of like insurrection, right? Like some sort of rebellious act, like more like potentially violence. And of course, you know, this is another sort of piece of the puzzle where there were all these people that knew what was going on, but didn't take enough action to stop it.
I'm also wondering if Park Jin-sung kind of caught wind of what happened, and he has this opportunity now. He has to disband on a high note, otherwise he could be the next person to disappear.
Or
That's
he's
true.
triggering the underground. Like he wants to take this. You know, if this is going to be some kind of public
that's their code
speech.
phrase.
Yeah. Because the other thing
Sleeper
is,
agents.
the other thing is the title. I mean, this is a draft. Why wasn't this the speech he delivered?
Oh yeah, maybe it wasn't really delivered.
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll have to see. This is the last thing we read. So.
It's a lot of questions. It's so like this gave so many more questions than answers.
Yeah, so we learned in this that Yuna was in some kind of very strange relationship with a woman named Misoon, and they're very clearly in a romantic relationship. Not sure if they're in a sexual relationship. I guess they are. But they're at least in a romantic relationship, and they call each other sisters, even though they are not sisters. And that's how Yuna was living her life. I don't know if that's supposed to be like that she's like really almost like she's like so deep in the closet that she like won't call her actual like lesbian relationship a lesbian relationship, like she has to make up another word for it so that it fits in her worldview.
I'm kind of guessing. The impression that I'm getting is that from what we've seen, Yuna is not, you know, she's a very smart woman. She's got considerable clout in society, but we can tell that she's not satisfied because she's wanting to have sex with a man for once. And the fact that she hasn't been able to do that could speak to maybe her position where people don't want to bother with her because she's got that authority, or maybe they don't see that as a desirable trait for women to have. But I think I'm going to say that that's kind of the crux of the whole situation, where she has kind of dedicated
She
her life
views-
to this,
yeah,
and she's
she's-
not getting any satisfaction.
She's sort of glorifying heterosexual romance as the ultimate in society, and we don't really know where that came from exactly. I mean, obviously it comes from, you know, these old Confucian, or like the way that the Joseon dynasty interpreted Confucianism for their own regime, but this sort of, but yeah, and it also isn't clear if like if Yuna even, maybe she used to feel something for Misoon, but it seems like she's primarily using her because she knows that Misoon is in love with her, and she's just sort of like using her because she's like, well, I've got a sucker that I can use for, you know,
using for
being
a fall
my
person,
fall girl,
or
and,
maybe
yeah.
just somebody in the meantime because nobody else will touch her. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very strange, and Yuna obviously has a lot of anxiety about being in, like, saying the right thing so she gets in a relationship with Ryu, or like with a man in general, and like how men work and all these kind of things. Like, she's totally othered men to being this like abstract concept that she needs to appease, and we still don't really know how she got that way in how she views the world. Yeah, she's yeah. So, but I think the key thing is that her own feelings of instability are so profound that she is going
That
to
she ruined society.
apply that to all of society. It's because it can't, I guess, because she's in denial, I guess, about her own, her own feelings, or she doesn't have the empathy or the self-awareness to know, because she's, I think, we don't want to armchair diagnose characters and everything, but like a narcissist does not realize that other people, right, have feelings, and it's like, well, my feelings are the same feelings that everyone has. And so that she's there, and she either doesn't understand that everybody else might not feel the same way, or she doesn't care. She prioritizes her own need for stability over literally like all of society.
Well, she apparently knows all about man's feelings, but just uses that to get stuff.
Yeah, where did she get that? Like what? She had to like read books about this, about like, oh, this is how men are, and like, or like this sort of like behavioral psychology stuff. But anyway, it's also an interesting thing because during my time in academia, I came across the saying that we study our weaknesses. And that a lot of people's thesis ends up being relevant to their personal shortcomings as a person. And that's why they're studying it, because it's something that they don't understand, or a solution to their own problem.
Here you go, Professor. Here's my thesis on why I cry at night.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, like I heard this from...
Here's why I don't have money.
Yeah, well, that's all of our theses.
That's all grad students, yeah.
But like a guy I worked with, his thesis was related to nonverbal behavior, and he's the one who told me about this, and he was like, this is probably also inspired by like me being socially awkward and like not always knowing these things, and so that's sort of where my interest went, because now I like know like way too much about nonverbal behavior, such as that it ruins all of my social interactions. But but not, I mean, this is not like, not to take it too seriously, but
it's also
it's
almost cliche with psych students. Like if you talk to any psych student, they all know, like, oh, we all get into this because we all have unresolved issues.
So her talking, her dissertation or her thesis work being on stability and the social destruction caused by talking about democratization. This whole idea that like that's the problem, and that's what we need, stability. Like it has, obviously all of this comes from like her need for stability.
I'm gonna say that either a man or a number of men used her and threw her away. And I'm gonna guess that's what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, there's probably a reason that Counselor O does not have a relationship with his daughter. Like, I would guess that he has to be a pretty shitty person who gave her some pretty shitty ideas from his behavior toward her as well. If he was absent, or if he also holds these views about, that gender should be a certain way, and it's, that kind of thing. See, it'll be interesting to see if we hear any more of sort of her background in that regard.
Yep.
And again, how does this end up with her having wiped Mute's memory and then spending several hours each day staring at a wall?
Yeah. Especially because
I forgot about that.
Yeah, the last when we played Analog, I mean, it was basically the story and the big reveal at the end of why this one person decided to destroy the society in which she was in, and we have a mirror. We have a reflection this time. That again, this is going to be the story of why this person was the catalyst to destroying the society in which she's in. And the first time it was, arguably justified. That maybe not 100% clear, but
it made sense. Yeah.
It made sense inside the context, and so that still could happen. From what I've seen so far, I don't think so, but that still could happen.
I don't know. I think at this point, it's it's just because of the way that she goes about doing it, because she's in this long con and this manipulative person who has no remorse and no caring about anybody's feelings. I really would struggle to even think of anything that would make sense or justify anything. Like, and I feel like if this turns into like she was abused and so therefore she grew up to become, this evil manipulating woman, is like, that's such a trope. And so yeah. I would not imagine that is what happens in this game, because it's such like a stereotypical,
it's like a cop
villain
out,
motivation. Yeah.
It's also like describing a serial killer. I mean, like, lots of serial killers were abused when they were kids. It doesn't just describe why they brutally murdered hundreds of people. Like, that
and also, and abuse doesn't it's not like abuse immediately makes you into a serial killer. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like
maybe just a petty arsonist.
Or just like somebody who's self-abusive afterwards.
Or a
just
victim.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just victims mostly victimize themselves. They don't tend to turn around and do it to other people. It happens, but it isn't the majority response.
There's no, the whole narrative of like, abuse is what causes, this kind of bad behavior, and it is false, and that's such a stereotype, especially for women characters. It's like, this character was sexually abused, which is why she's evil. That happens so much in so much media, and I really doubt this is going to happen in a game written by Miss Christine Love, but we'll see how it goes. So far, everything about Yuna and Ryu is like very stereotypical, like how they interact with each other, like they're like cartoon villains. Yuna has sort of put herself into this very clear and defined role on purpose. That's all part of the manipulation she's doing. So I don't know. I want to know more about her, and I hope that we
get some satisfactory answers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess we'll find out soon.
So next time, read the next six logs.
Works for me.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, everybody, take it easy. Thanks for listening.
Good night.
And good luck with that whole robot girl shit show you got going on.